The strongest people are often the ones no one checks on. Because, well, they make it look easy. Because they hold the room together. Because no one ever thinks to ask what it's costing them to stay calm. You were always that person. The one who noticed the shift in someone's tone before they even knew they were upset. The one who stayed steady even when everything around you was breaking. The one who made themselves small so others could breathe. And that strength? It wasn't just strength, it was strategy. It was a survival script you wrote before you even had language. Carl Jung, Swiss psychoanalyst and pioneer of depth psychology, called this the persona. That which in reality one is not, but which oneself and others think one is. A mask we wear not to deceive, but to belong, and no one wore it better than you. Because you didn't just put on a mask, you became it. You learned that calm was safer than chaos, that being needed was more secure than being known. That if you could be useful, maybe, just maybe, you'd be loved. You anticipated emotions like weather patterns. And long before a storm ever hit, you were already boarding up your heart. That's not strength, that's hypervigilance in disguise. That's what happens when intuition, your gift, gets hijacked by fear. It's what the Selkie learned too. In an old Scottish tale, the Selkie is a seal who sheds her skin to become a woman. She falls in love, has children, builds a life on land. But her husband hides her skin so she cannot return to the sea, and without it, something inside her fades. She smiles, but it's hollow. She stays, but she's not fully alive. Because when you can't return to your true nature, even love becomes a kind of cage. You did the same. You shed your skin to survive. You shaped yourself to what others needed. You became the mirror, the rock, the calm voice, the silent strength. And the world loved you for it, but they loved the role, not the reality. The mask, not the marrow. And now there's a quiet ache, not loud enough to scream, but persistent enough to haunt, the ache of being surrounded yet starved. The ache of applause that doesn't reach the heart. The ache of realizing that no one really sees you because you never let them. You were trained to believe that love is earned through self-erasure, that being good meant being convenient, that being valuable meant being invulnerable. But what if that's a lie? What if your deepest wound isn't that no one chose you, but that you never gave them the chance? You performed strength so perfectly that no one saw the trembling underneath. And you've worn the mask for so long you've started to forget what your own face looks like. But even now, even here, beneath all the layers, there is still a pulse, a self, a truth that has not died, only hidden, like the Selkie's skin, buried deep but not destroyed. You were never meant to live as a reflection, you were meant to live as yourself. And that begins the moment you whisper, I want more than being admired, I want to be known. That's not weakness, that's the first act of coming home. You didn't learn to feel, you arrived that way. Born with a mirror for a heart, not the kind that flatters, but the kind that reflects what others can't bear to see. Before you could speak, you could sense. When someone said, I'm fine, you heard everything between the words. When a room shifted, your body reacted before your mind caught up. This wasn't magic, it was survival. You lived in a world that often didn't say what it meant, so you learned to hear what it didn't say. Carl Jung once wrote, intuition is perception via the unconscious. It's not guessing, it's knowing. And your knowing ran deep. You didn't just observe people, you absorbed them. But knowing too much became its own kind of pain. Because when you feel everyone else's weather, you start to dress for their storms. You start to adjust, to dim your light so others don't feel small, to silence your needs so others don't feel burdened, to become whatever is required in the moment. That's not empathy. That's emotional shape-shifting. And it works until it doesn't. Because every time you shifted to match someone else's pain, you stepped further away from your own center, until one day you couldn't hear yourself at all. You were praised for it. You're so mature, you're so understanding, you just get people. But no one asked what it was costing you to be that person. No one noticed that you were vanishing. The mirror became a mask, And the more clearly others saw themselves in you, the less you recognized your own reflection. Even if you've never called it intuition, you know this feeling, the exhaustion of being hyper-aware, the loneliness of never being asked, what about you? The ache of being helpful but never held. The Selkie knew that ache. She remembered the ocean even after years on land. She remembered the feel of her skin, and though she loved the life she built, the call to return was stronger. The ache wasn't about escape, it was about return, not to a place, but to a self. You have that same longing, the need to be something other than adaptable. To be someone who doesn't just mirror pain, but holds their own truth, undistorted. This doesn't mean becoming selfish, it means becoming honest. It means allowing space for your own needs, even when no one else understands them. You're not too much, you're just not used to being held the way you hold others. But it's time. Time to stop managing the room, time to stop disappearing. Time to remember that you too deserve to exist in full color. Because you weren't born to be a mirror, you were born to be seen. And the first person who needs to see you is you. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were trying to survive. It just looked like ambition. It looked like discipline. It looked like composure. But it was fear, refined. Fear masked as excellence. If you could be perfect, maybe they wouldn't leave. If you could be flawless, maybe they wouldn't criticize. If you could become everything they needed, maybe you'd finally feel like enough. That's how it began, not with ego, but with absence. Not with entitlement, but with a quiet ache. If I'm not exceptional, will I still be loved? And so you rose. You got it right. You stayed ahead. You made yourself invaluable. You were praised for your maturity before you even finished being a child. But perfection is not connection. It's distance polished. Carl Jung, the depth psychologist who first mapped the masks we wear, warned, a man cannot get rid of himself in favor of an artificial personality without punishment. And that punishment isn't always visible. It's not failure, it's fatigue. It's waking up with the quiet dread of having to hold it all together again. It's the shame of success that still feels empty. It's the exhaustion of being admired but not known. Because the more perfect you became, the more invisible your needs became. People assumed you didn't struggle because you never showed the struggle. They assumed you were fine because you never gave them a reason not to. But what they praised in you was not you, it was the mask. And praise that only lands on the mask never reaches the soul beneath it. You became so competent that no one ever thought to ask if you were tired. You became so strong that no one ever wondered if you were breaking. You became so precise that your humanness started to feel like a flaw. But that wasn't always the story. There was a time long ago when you did things just to feel joy. You drew without worrying if it was good. You danced without checking the mirror. You laughed loudly, cried freely, needed openly. Until one day someone recoiled, or judged, or ignored. And you felt it, the heat of shame, the flush of being too much. And in that moment you learned to be accepted. I must be exceptional. That's how the mask was born. But masks are heavy, and the longer you wear them, the more they fuse with your skin. Until one day you don't remember what your real face looks like. The Selkie knew that feeling. She wore the role, she played the part. She gave her best years to a life built on land. But every so often she'd stand by the shoreline and ache, not for rebellion, but for remembrance. For the part of herself that never stopped hearing the sea. That's you. You've mastered the art of being enough for everyone except yourself. You've been successful, but have you been seen? You've been praised, but have you been felt? You've been perfect, but have you been real? James Hollis reminds us that of which we are not aware owns us. And what's been owning you is the belief that love is conditional. But love that demands you never fall apart isn't love, it's management. It's worship of the mask. Perfection was never your goal, it was your defense. A fortress built out of intuition and fear. But fortresses don't keep out pain. They keep out everything, including joy, vulnerability, connection. And maybe you're ready. Not to fail, not to unravel, but to breathe. To stop editing every sentence. To stop calculating how you're being perceived. To stop trying so hard to be enough because you were always enough even when you were a mess. It's not your excellence that makes you worthy, it's your existence. You are not a performance, you are a person. And you don't have to be perfect to be unforgettable, you just have to be honest. You learned how to vanish without anyone noticing, not with bitterness, not with dramatics, but with elegance, with grace, with a smile that said, "I'm fine," so convincingly, even you started to believe it. You didn't disappear because you were weak. You disappeared because it was safer than being misunderstood. Because being seen never felt like connection, it felt like exposure. So you made yourself smaller, easier to love, quieter to keep the peace. You became the one who anticipated everyone else's needs before they had to name them. The one who dimmed your glow so others wouldn't feel overshadowed. The one who stepped aside again and again so someone else could take up space. And in the process, you convinced yourself that this was love, that this was kindness, that invisibility was noble. But love without reciprocity is not love, it's erosion. It's a slow dissolving of self. A gentle vanishing that no one calls out because they were never looking closely enough to notice you leaving. Carl Jung spoke of the persona as the mask we wear to meet the world. But what happens when the mask is made of silence? When your entire identity becomes wrapped around not being a problem. What happens is this: you become essential but not valued, respected but not remembered, needed but not known. Because you taught the world that your presence is quiet and your needs are optional. And the world believed you. So you became the background music in everyone else's story, soothing, reliable, invisible. But silence is not the absence of sound. It's the absence of acknowledgement. And you've lived too long in that absence. You disappeared so others could feel seen. But now you're starving for the very thing you spent a lifetime making room for: recognition. The Selkie knows this hunger. She stayed, she gave. She made herself smaller and smaller. Until one day, by accident or grace, she found the skin she'd hidden. And in that moment, she remembered she was never meant to live on land forever. That story's yours too. Because deep down there's a self you buried under years of being good. Good at listening, good at helping, good at shrinking. And that self is not loud, but it is aching. For someone to ask how you're doing and mean it. For someone to stay when your emotions get inconvenient. For someone to love you not for your usefulness, but for your truth. But here's the painful irony. No one can find you if you don't show up. You've made it easy for people to overlook you. You've made it easy for them to forget your needs. And now you're angry, and that anger is sacred. It's the voice of the self you buried. The you that wants to be seen without shrinking. The you that wants to speak without scripting. The you that doesn't want to be low maintenance anymore, because maintenance is life. You don't need to become loud to exist. You just need to stop erasing yourself. Take up space, not to dominate, but to return, to your own body, to your own voice, to your own presence. You were not born to be the supporting character in someone else's story. You were born to be seen in full holy clarity. You are not invisible, you are unclaimed, and now it's time to come home to the self you left behind to be loved. Because the ones who will love you most deeply are the ones who need no mask to find you. There's a kind of tiredness that sleep can't touch. A weariness that doesn't come from doing too much, but from feeling too much. From knowing too much too soon. From scanning every room like your survival depends on it, because once it did, they say you're intuitive. But intuition for you was never just insight, it was protection. You didn't just sense people's emotions, you preempted them. Before anyone spoke, you'd already read the undercurrent. Before the shift in tone, you'd already adjusted. Before the outburst, you'd already flinched inside. It looked like empathy, but it was emotional surveillance. A kind of knowing that kept you safe by keeping you small. Carl Jung called intuition perception via the unconscious. But when that perception is shaped by fear, it becomes a reflex. A kind of internal weather map that never stops scanning for storms. You became the barometer in every relationship, predicting, managing, smoothing. But in all your attunement to others, you forgot how to tune into yourself. You didn't set out to disappear. You set out to prevent disaster. You thought, if I can stay ahead of what they need, I'll never have to feel the blowback. If I can fix it before it breaks, I'll never be blamed. If I can anticipate their pain, maybe I'll be spared. But the price was steep. You learned to regulate everyone else's nervous system, but ignored your own. You learned to anticipate needs so well that your own became irrelevant. You learned to carry everyone's chaos until yours buried you. And people thanked you for it. You're so thoughtful. You're always so calm. You're the one I can always count on. But here's what they never said. You look tired. What about you? Can I carry you for once? And that's the heartbreak. That your pain became invisible beneath your usefulness. That your exhaustion was masked by your capability. That you could be falling apart and still be the one they leaned on. You were 10, maybe 11, the first time you realized you could calm people just by hiding your feelings, and so you did. You smiled when you were anxious. You nodded when you were hurt. You adapted because it was safer to be what they needed than to be what you truly felt. But you are not a mirror. You are not a buffer. You're not a forecast model for emotional storms. You are a human being, with needs, with limits, with a nervous system that was never meant to carry the weight of everyone else's silence. And yet you kept going because it worked, because it got you through. But now it's breaking you. You wake up tired, you smile through tears. You overthink even joy, wondering if you're allowed to keep it. You've internalized the idea that peace only exists when you're the one creating it. But peace built on suppression isn't peace, it's pressure. The Selkie knows this pressure. Her skin hidden, her voice softened, her presence offered again and again. Until one day, standing at the edge of the sea, she couldn't hear anyone else's need. She could only hear her own. And it was loud, not angry. Not cruel, just true. You're at that shoreline now. There's a voice rising in you, not screaming, but steady. I can't carry this anymore. And that voice is not weakness. It's your return. The great psychologist James Hollis said that of which we are not aware owns us. And what's owned you is the belief that your intuition must always be on duty, that your empathy must always be applied, that your needs are negotiable in the name of harmony. But what if that's wrong? What if the world doesn't end when you stop holding it together? What if love doesn't vanish when you say, I'm not okay? What if you don't need to be understood to take up space? This is not the end of your strength, this is its transformation. You don't need to anticipate. You don't need to manage. You don't need to know what they feel before you're allowed to feel anything at all. You just need to feel. And trust that the world is not as fragile as the one that first made you afraid. If this sounds like you say it now, I'm tired, and I deserve to rest. Comment it, whisper it, write it down. Because naming the truth is the beginning of becoming whole again. There's no applause when the mask first comes off. There is no music swelling, no cinematic ending, only quiet and fear. And a trembling hope that maybe, just maybe, who you are is enough without the act. But the act was good, wasn't it? You learned how to be composed, how to be dependable, how to be admired. You learned how to wear strength like a second skin. And in doing so, you hid the most sacred parts of you, your softness, your fear, your needs, your dreams. You made your own humanity an inconvenience. You edited yourself until what remained was efficient, likable, and hollow. And when people said, you're so strong, you smiled. Even though strength never felt like pride, it felt like pressure, like armor. Carl Jung called the journey back to the self-individuation, the slow, painful, courageous process of unbecoming what the world demanded and becoming who you truly are. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But the privilege comes with a cost. You have to face the fear beneath the persona. The fear that says, if I stop being the strong one, will anyone stay? If I let them see the truth, will they still love me? If I fall apart, will I ever come back together? But here's what's more terrifying than all of that: spending your life never being seen. The Selkie didn't leave because she stopped loving. She left because she finally remembered herself. And the pain of staying silent became greater than the fear of going home. This isn't about abandoning people. It's about returning to the part of you that you abandoned. The one who laughed without filtering. The one who cried without apology. The one who didn't yet believe that love was something to earn through endurance. You don't need to shatter the mask. You just need to put it down, gently, respectfully. Like a costume that saved your life but no longer fits the role. The role you're meant to play now is real. You, in full, with needs. With edges, with presence, not perfect but complete. Because love can't touch a mask. It can only touch the person underneath. And the person underneath is worthy, not when you're strong, not when you're silent, not when you're needed, but always. This is your homecoming. Not back to who you were before you put on the armor, but to the you who chose to take it off. That is courage, that is healing, that is the beginning. And if this journey has felt like yours, say so in the comments, in a whisper, in your journal, right? I'm here. Because the most powerful thing you can do is show up unmasked and let someone else see that they're not alone. You're not alone, you're not too much, you're not invisible, you're not broken, you're just home. And that is the masterpiece.